everyone. Happy draft week. I am Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL. And first off, lots of good responses from you guys from the podcast I did yesterday. I think it was one of the better ones in terms of really pinning down the Steelers draft trends with Omar Khan in charge. And I really think they're telling. I think there's a lot to be had with it. I think you can get a really good idea of what they're looking for, and I approve. I like that the method that they've taken over the last 2 years. So go check that out if you haven't. And what I wanted to do today is anyone that follows, Dale and I on the drive, we do a ton of mock drafts, or is familiar, with the situation here. You don't have a second round pick. You're picking at 21. You got a gap until 83 for your next pick, which is pretty substantial. And I would really like the Steelers to trade down 5 spots, 3 spots, 10 spots. I don't know. And in this particular draft class, there's so much ambiguity with this area. I think you could get pretty close to equal prospects even by going backwards. I don't think that there's really any chance that the Steelers trade up in the first round, especially without a second round pick. Remember, they do have a wealth of picks coming next year at this time in terms of comp picks. So I think that they could move around quite a bit in this draft, but it takes 2 to tango. And that's why I wanted to talk about today is I wanted to talk about these teams behind the Steelers in the first round. Could they be interested in moving up? The short answer is what I think you want from a Steelers perspective is offensive tackles, which are super coveted and are in short supply in this draft. You want them to start falling off the board in the top 20 picks. You also want a rash of edge guys to go. And I think both could happen. A team's going to take these non-premium positions, running back, tight end, or are they just going to say, give me the bird in the hand, let's take an Eagles-like approach and just give me another edge rusher. Give me another edge rusher. And then some of these teams behind them might think, man, these guys are going quicker than we thought. We might have to move up. So I wanted to talk about some teams that might be interested in calling the Steelers now. And frankly, that's what's going on in these buildings. These last couple days before the draft, teams are really fine-tuning their board. There's no more meetings or things like that, but they're fine-tuning their board, and they're also really working the phones, trying to talk to other GMs, other organizations. What might they want to do so that they can prearrange some things before the draft starts? So those are the positions I think teams are going to be after. The rest of these teams, obviously, in the first round are playoff teams. If you don't know, it's crazy. This is the first time it's happened in forever. Every team currently owns their earned first-round pick. And I have a feeling that's going to hold true up until the draft kickoff, and then there'll be moves. I'm sure not every team's going to stick and pick with their 32 that they were awarded. But I do think some of these playoff teams certainly could be in the market for a tackle or an edge rusher, maybe a corner. And there's also going to be some of these bad teams that maybe would try to get ahead of the Steelers or flat out just trade with the Steelers for a quarterback with their second pick. So I think that's possible. But I definitely think trading down this year will not be easy. I mean, I firmly believe that. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. Obviously, we got basketball and hockey playoffs right now. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, the Chargers are at 22. I mean, what's the chances you're going to swap one pick? But they have a bevy of needs. Maybe they'd want to get one of the two tight ends that fell. They have edge rush as a need as well, but I don't see that. Green Bay, certainly, they always draft defense high. If there's an edge rush, maybe they would want to go from 23 to 21. I think corner is their bigger need, and Jari Alexander could be on the move, which could really make that an issue. The Vikings at 24, I don't think they're capable of trading up. They don't have a day 2 pick, so let's scratch them. But the Texans at 25, they traded Tunsil. They've got a lot of draft compensation this year and next. I absolutely think that they could be in the market for a tackle for sure. So, a Connerly, a Simmons, somebody like that. And they signed Robinson after trading Tunsil, that they could let one of those guys develop. Maybe they would even be interested in a wide receiver. If they had like Golden and McMillan with equal grades and one of them falls, maybe they want to move up to get a Tank Dell replacement, a guy opposite Nico Collins. The Rams, 26, very aggressive organization overall. I doubt they would be in the Dart Sanders mold right now. I think they're in it to win it. They just gave Stafford money. I don't think they're going to prepare for the future. They don't have a second-round pick either, but they are aggressive. I think corner would be the spot they would be looking for, so I'm not sure they are a great fit. 27 is the Ravens. No, I just don't see it. The Lions are interesting to me. A lot of people mock them as an edge pass rusher, and I totally understand that. They need someone opposite Hutchinson who's coming off of injury. So if there's a run on those guys, the Lions should be interested. They're also an aggressive organization. They also could be one offensive lineman away. Their guard position, they lost Zeitler, and Decker, the left tackle, is getting up in age. Maybe they'd want to get ahead of that and get an offensive lineman. So I think the Lions are a possible trade candidate at 28. I don't feel it with Washington. They traded for Deebo Samuel and they traded for Tunsil, so they're pretty light on picks. The Bills, would you want to go all the way down to 30? Maybe. I mean, with these teams, these next couple I mentioned, Bills, Chiefs, Eagles, I want their late second round pick. That's the appeal with these teams. Is you're going to move down a fair amount in the first round, but you're probably in some way, shape, or form, or with a little bit of finagling, probably able to get their second round pick. I think the Bills are going to go defense. They would worry me that they would want to trade up for one of the defensive tackles, though. Nolan, Grant, Harmon. Maybe it would be for a corner. Maybe it would be for an edge pass rusher. But I don't know that doing business with them gets you the player you want if you truly want to get one of these defensive tackles. And obviously it would make trading down would be much easier, of course, if all three of those guys were sitting there at 20. I mean, obviously that makes a heck of a lot more sense. If there's only one of the three defensive tackles there and you're married to getting one of them, that's different than if all three are sitting there. And who's to say if you were to make the trade at 30, you could still make a trade to get to 26 after one of them falls off the board. Doesn't mean you have to sit there and pick and not move up at all. The Chiefs are extremely interesting to me. Now, their right tackle, Taylor, is overpaid, and I can't imagine being thrilled with him for very long. They went and signed Jalen Moore at left tackle to way too much money. He's been a backup for the Niners, and they still have a hole at left guard. So they seem like a team with all intentions of protecting Patrick Mahomes. Get the Simmons, get the Connerly, maybe bump one of those tackles into guard, maybe move on from Taylor after the year. I think the Chiefs could be really aggressive, and some of these insiders have really implied that they're looking to move up. Now, moving all the way to 31 is not perfect, but you'd get their second round pick and maybe a little more. And that's not too shabby. That gives you a lot of firepower in this draft that the Steelers just don't have. I don't know what to think of the Eagles. Obviously, they're Super Bowl champs. They have a loaded roster. They don't have a ton of needs. But I could definitely see a D lineman of some sort, whether it's a D tackle, which you wouldn't want to hand them a D tackle, or an edge, which you'd love to have them come up to get. And I could see that. I mean, this is an aggressive front office too. Moving all the way to 32, it would also pay off well. Now, last thing I wanted to discuss here are the bad teams. You know, the Steelers never trade out of the first round. I mean, so this would be something that doesn't happen regularly. And would you want to trade with the Browns? Maybe not, but I still think you'd listen in this scenario. The Browns have the 33rd pick. The Giants have the 34th pick. That's who leads off day 2. Now, I don't think either team is going to take a quarterback at the 2nd or 3rd pick. I would bet from their perspective to try to get back in round 1 for Dart or Sanders, they would want to get ahead of the Steelers. But if the Steelers are sitting there at 21 and one or both of those quarterbacks is available, doesn't mean you can't reach out to those teams and say, you want to get back in round 1? How about number 33 or 34 if you're the Giants? I don't think you'd get next year's first, but I think you get next year's second from a bad team and something else this year. Maybe a 4th, maybe a 3rd. I don't know. I mean, especially if they're trading up for a quarterback, that would be really intriguing to me too. I don't want to go much further down than that, but I did want to mention the Raiders at 37. Maybe they want a Geno Smith, project to learn behind, a Dart, somebody like that. Or the Patriots at 38. They have a lot of picks as well. And if they don't get a tackle with the first round, maybe they would be really aggressive to move up, because I think taking a tackle at 4 is a little bit of an overspend if you're the Patriots. So maybe you take best available there and then get back into the first round for the tackle or an edge, something like that. So, and if you go all the way back to 38, you would get a wealth of picks, including something decent next year. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there with all these picks next year, and you traded out around 1, but that doesn't mean you couldn't get back to 30 and grab Nolan. So I do expect the Steelers to at least try and maybe successfully move around this draft board a lot. And one indicator, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I have told you about this, that just based on their visits, they brought in a lot of players that aren't worth the 21st pick, but are definitely going to be gone by the 83rd pick. So I do think they have extreme interest in getting back into round 2, early round 3. And really the best way to do it is getting out of 21, which I totally get. And I would not mind that one bit. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. I hope this was helpful. Draft is right around the corner. Probably do a mailbag before the draft, and then I'll come back Thursday night, late night, record. Friday night, late night, Saturday late, record. So that's my schedule. All right, take care.